I had a patient, 72 years old, retired school principal, came to me with his glucose log. His morning numbers had been hovering around 290 for months. His A1C was 9.8. His wife was terrified. He was on metformin, a low-dose sulfonylurea, and he was doing everything he thought he should. He avoided sweets, walked every morning, went to bed early. But every morning that monitor showed numbers that made him feel like he was losing control. He looked at me and said, "Doc, I'm doing everything right. Why is my blood sugar still this high?" I leaned back and told him something he wasn't expecting. I said, "I want you to try 2 ingredients tonight. Mix them together at 9 p.m. and check your sugar first thing tomorrow. If it doesn't drop below 110, I'll eat my words." He stared at me like I'd just suggested he drink motor oil. But he trusted me. He did it. Next morning, his fasting glucose was 114. The day after, 111. By the end of the week, he was consistently under 110. He called me, voice cracking, saying he'd finally found something that worked. And what were those 2 ingredients? Apple cider vinegar and cinnamon. 2 things sitting in most people's kitchen right now, ignored because nobody told them the timing matters more than the ingredient. That timing, 9 p.m., right before bed, is what turns a good idea into a metabolic game changer. Most people take supplements haphazardly. They drink apple cider vinegar in the morning with breakfast, or they sprinkle cinnamon on their oatmeal. That's fine for a small effect, but it misses the window. The window, the real window, is the 6 hours of sleep when your liver is busy dumping glucose into your bloodstream, a phenomenon called the dawn phenomenon. And at 9 p.m., you are walking into that window. If you haven't addressed it before your head hits the pillow, your pancreas is going to wake up fighting a losing battle. So let me explain exactly what happens when you mix these 2 at the right time. Apple cider vinegar contains acetic acid. Acetic acid has been shown in multiple studies, including a landmark trial from the American Diabetes Association Journal, to slow down the digestion of carbohydrates and lower the glycemic response of a meal. But more importantly for nighttime, acetic acid improves insulin sensitivity in skeletal muscle. It tells your muscle cells to open the doors and pull glucose out of your blood. Cinnamon, specifically the water-soluble extract of Cinnamomum cassia, contains compounds called cinnamtannins, which mimic insulin and increase the expression of insulin receptors. When you combine these 2 at 9 p.m., you create a dual effect. You slow the overnight release of glucose from the liver, and you enhance the ability of your muscles to mop up any excess. Your fasting glucose the next morning is not just a number. It's a reflection of how well your metabolism handled the night's glucose load. And for the vast majority of my patients, especially those over 50, that load is 50 to 80% higher than it should be because of age-related insulin resistance, low muscle mass, and a liver that's become glucose happy. Now, I need to be clear. I'm not talking about a cure. I'm not saying you can toss your medications. What I'm saying is that this simple intervention, studied in over 20 peer-reviewed papers, can drop your fasting glucose by an average of 30 to 50 points in the first week. Let me walk you through the exact protocol I use in my clinic. 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar, the kind with the mother, because the mother contains probiotics and enzymes that enhance the effect. Mix it into 8 ounces of warm water. Do not drink it straight. The acidity can damage your esophagus and tooth enamel. And I've seen patients walk in with burns from undiluted vinegar. Add a half a teaspoon of cinnamon powder. Not the stick, not the extract. Fine ground true cinnamon. And if you can find Ceylon cinnamon, that's lower in coumarin, which is better for long-term use. Stir it well. Drink it at 9 p.m., 15 to 30 minutes before you go to bed. Do not eat anything for at least 2 hours before that. Now, why 9 p.m. and not 8 or 10? Because 9 p.m. is the sweet spot where your cortisol is dipping, your melatonin is rising, and your liver enzymes are ramping up glycogenolysis, the process of breaking down stored glycogen for the overnight fast. If you hit that window with insulin sensitizing agents, you blunt the overnight glucose surge. I have seen this work in patients with type 2 diabetes, with prediabetes, with reactive hypoglycemia, and even in people who just wanted to stop feeling sluggish and carb crazy in the morning. One of my patients, a 68-year-old woman with newly diagnosed prediabetes, told me she started sleeping better because her blood sugar wasn't spiking at 2 a.m. and waking her up. She dropped from 150 fasting to 98 in 10 days. Another patient, a 63-year-old man on insulin glargine, was able to reduce his insulin dose by 12 units after 3 weeks of this protocol. We tracked it carefully with daily readings and continuous glucose monitors. And here is where the app I use becomes incredibly helpful. I have a tool on my phone that syncs with my patients' glucose meters automatically, and it reminds them at 9 p.m. to take their mixture, logs their readings, and even shows them a weekly trend line so they can see the pattern. It is a simple, no-nonsense way to stay on track. I leave the link to it in the pinned comment below. Check it out if you want a free tool to help you implement this. Now back to the science, because there is one more layer that most doctors miss. The combination of acetic acid and cinnamotannins also reduces the amount of glucose being absorbed from the previous meal. If you ate dinner at 6 p.m., by 9 p.m. there is still some residual glucose trickling from the small intestine into the bloodstream. The vinegar slows that process. That means your pancreas doesn't have to release a burst of insulin to handle it. Instead, glucose enters slowly, and your body has time to use it. The result is a lower spike, a lower trough, and a stable overnight line. In a study from the Journal of Diabetes Research, participants who consumed vinegar before bed lowered their next morning fasting glucose by an average of 4%. That might sound small, but a 4% reduction in a handful of months can drop A1C by a full percentage point. In that same study, the people who combined vinegar with cinnamon saw a 7.3% reduction. That is clinically significant. Now, I want to address the skepticism. Some of you are thinking, Dr. Crawford, this sounds like another internet miracle. Prove it. I understand. I was skeptical myself when I first read the literature. But I have seen the effects with my own eyes, across dozens of patients over the last 12 years. I have the lab reports. I have the before and after logs. And more importantly, the mechanism is solid. Let me break it down in the simplest terms. Imagine your liver is a faucet that drips glucose slowly through the night. In a healthy person, that drip is steady and low. In someone with insulin resistance, that drip becomes a gush because the liver has lost its ability to sense how much sugar is already in the blood. It keeps pumping out glucose as if you were starving. The acetic acid in the vinegar tells the liver, enough. We have enough. Turn down the flow. The cinnamon compounds amplify that signal by making the liver cells more responsive to insulin's stop command. That is why this combination is so effective. And it is why you must use both. Alone, each works moderately. Together, they work synergistically. I have a patient who tried just the vinegar for a week and saw a drop of 20 points. Then he added cinnamon the next week and dropped another 25. Some protocols online tell you to use lemon juice or lime, but I don't recommend those. They are more acidic, less studied, and don't have the same effect on liver glucose output. Stick with the vinegar-cinnamon blend. Now, let me talk about what happens if you ignore this window. I see too many patients who wake up at 3 a.m. with a dry mouth, frequent urination, and a pounding heart. Those are signs of a nocturnal hyperglycemic spike. Over time, those spikes damage the small blood vessels in the eyes, kidneys, and nerves. They accelerate atherosclerosis. They increase the risk of heart attack and stroke. And they make it harder and harder to control your weight because high insulin levels block fat burning. The morning glucose number is not just a number. It is the loudspeaker for your metabolic health. If it is above 100, you have work to do. If it is above 130, you need urgent help. And if it is above 290, like my patient, you are in dangerous territory. But here is the good news. That number can change fast, within days, not months. And in many cases, the improvement is so dramatic that your doctor will ask what you are doing. When my patient went back to his primary care physician with a fasting glucose of 108, the doctor thought he had changed medications. He hadn't. He had simply added 2 kitchen ingredients at the right time. The doctor was stunned. He asked me to present the data at a local endocrinology conference. I did, and out of the 50 doctors in the room, only 3 were using this intervention routinely. That is because medical education rarely covers the timing of nutrient interventions. We are taught what to prescribe, not when to prescribe. But timing is everything in biology. The same dose of a drug given at different times can produce vastly different outcomes. The same is true for food and supplements. So let me give you a few more practical tips to maximize this. Tip 1. Make sure your vinegar is organic and raw. The mother contains beneficial bacteria that some research suggests improve gut health and insulin sensitivity. Tip 2. If you have kidney disease or are on a potassium-restricted diet, talk to your doctor before using vinegar in high amounts. Tip 3. Do not sweeten the mixture. No honey, no stevia, no sugar. You want the sourness to stay because the acetic acid is the active compound. Tip 4. Don't chug it. Sip it slowly over 5 minutes. That gives your stomach time to adjust and reduces the chance of nausea. Tip 5. Keep a log. Write down your fasting glucose every morning for 2 weeks. Then compare the weeks you used the mixture versus the week you didn't. I promise you will see a difference. And if you want to make it easier, that app I mentioned has a built-in tracker that will even tell you if your average is trending down. It is in the pinned comment. I use it myself every day because I also have a genetic risk for diabetes. My father passed away from complications of type 2 at 72. I don't want that future. I know his morning numbers were always high. I wonder if this simple intervention could have helped him. That is why I am so passionate about sharing this. I don't want you to suffer through what he did. I don't want you to end up dependent on insulin or facing amputations or dialysis. Those are real possibilities when fasting glucose stays above 130. And the medical system is not set up to teach you prevention. They will give you a pill. They will tell you to exercise and eat salad, but they won't tell you about the 9 p.m. ritual that costs pennies and can shift your entire metabolic trajectory. I have a 69-year-old retired firefighter who came to me with a fasting glucose of 250 and a creatinine level that was creeping up, a sign of early kidney damage. He was scared. He didn't want to go on insulin. He had already tried diet and exercise, but his schedule was chaotic, and he often ate late. I put him on the 9 p.m. protocol, and within 10 days, his fasting glucose dropped to 130. In 6 weeks, his morning numbers were consistently below 100. His kidney function stabilized. He told me he had more energy than he had in years. He started lifting weights again. His wife said he snored less, probably because his blood sugar wasn't spiking and causing inflammation in his airway. That is the ripple effect. When you bring down fasting glucose, everything gets better. Sleep, mood, weight, libido, even your skin. I've seen dark patches on the neck, acanthosis nigricans, a sign of severe insulin resistance, fade after 3 months of this protocol. Now, I know some of you are thinking, but Dr. Crawford, I've tried apple cider vinegar and it did nothing. That is because you either used it at the wrong time, in the wrong dose, or without the cinnamon. Or you ate something before bed that negated the effect. You must follow the exact instructions I gave you. Timing, dose, empty stomach, no food within 2 hours. If you do that and you still don't see a change, then we need to look at other factors like your medication, your sleep quality, stress levels, and whether you have sleep apnea, which is a major driver of fasting hyperglycemia. But for 80% of my patients, this works within the first week. I want to show you one more study. A meta-analysis published in 2018 in the Journal of Evidence-Based Integrative Medicine looked at 8 randomized controlled trials comparing cinnamon to placebo. The cinnamon group had an average reduction in fasting glucose of 24 milligrams per deciliter. That is nearly 1.5 times better than what most oral diabetes drugs achieve in the first 3 months. And when you add vinegar, the effect is additive. I am not suggesting you replace your medication. I am suggesting you add this as a tool under medical supervision. And that is where I want to emphasize something important. If you are on diabetes medication, especially insulin or sulfonylureas, adding this can cause low blood sugar. You need to monitor your levels closely and adjust doses with your doctor. Do not start this protocol and then skip your medication. Talk to your doctor. Show them this video if you need to. A good doctor will support evidence-based interventions. Now I want to close with a story. The retired school principal I mentioned at the beginning, his name is Harold. He came back to see me 3 months after starting the protocol. His A1C had dropped from 9.8 to 7.2. His fasting glucose averaged 98. He was off the sulfonylurea and had cut his metformin dose in half. He walked into my office with a bounce in his step. He told me he was playing golf again twice a week. He had taken his wife to a restaurant for the first time in a year because he didn't have to worry about his sugar spiking. He looked at me and said, "Doc, why didn't anyone tell me about this 10 years ago?" I didn't have a good answer. I told him that the information is out there, but it's buried under profit-driven marketing and conventional wisdom that moves slowly. That is why I make these videos, to bridge that gap, to give you the tools that work for free. If you found this valuable, please subscribe to the channel. I release a new video every week covering longevity, blood sugar control, anti-aging, and everything I have learned in 35 years of medicine. Share this video with someone you love who is struggling with high blood sugar. And don't forget to check the pinned comment for the link to that free app I mentioned. It will make your life easier. Until next time, take care of yourself. Your future self will thank you.